Today in the garage, we are taking a look at our 2020 F250 and the auxiliary switch buttons, how to wire to them. So if you have a 2017 and newer F250 F350 and you have those auxiliary switches in your headliner up by the sunglass little holder, this is what you want to know on how to wire to those and make those things functional. And if you don't have one of these trucks, well, you should buy one because they're really cool. So first of all, if you open up your manual, on ours it's page 554, but what it's going to do is it's going to show you each of the 6 different circuits that are available for use. Now you'll notice that circuit 1 through 4 is a 25 amp circuit, and 5 and 6 are 40 amp circuits. So those are going to correspond to your switches up there, 1 through 6. Now, if you're wanting to wire to, let's say, switch number 1, you'll look here at switch number 1, and it's going to say what wire you'll be looking for. It'll say brown with green trace, which is really great. But then you're wondering, where the heck do you find a brown wire with a green trace? Well, what you want to do is pop your hood, and right where your battery is, and this is for the gas engine. The diesel might be different location, but hopefully it's the same. But on the gas one, it's where the battery is, and you'll find this little fuse cover. And I just dropped the cover, so it's down on the floor somewhere. But it's this little fuse block here. So if you pop the cover on it, what you're going to see is these different fuses. And the fuses that correspond to these switches are the ones that are 25 amp and 40 amp. And they're going to match with the cover there with the switch position 1 through 6. So if you reach underneath this fuse block, you're going to pull out a huge clump of wires. Now these wires are where you're going to find those 6 different ones that are corresponded inside of that manual. Now there's some extra ones you're not going to be using because they don't match with those circuits for those auxiliary switches. Now for us, we went ahead and wired a few different accessories in. We've got 2 ARB air compressors, and those are run to switches 5 and 6. Now the reason we ran it to 5 and 6 is because the ARB compressors pull 40 amps of power when they're turned on. So that's a really important thing when you're looking to wire accessory to one of those switches. You want to first read and see how much amperage that accessory is going to use, and make sure that you assign it to a proper switch that's going to provide it enough. Now if you're installing some fog lights and they pull maybe 20 amps of power, you can install them to any of the 6 switches, no problem. And then if you're concerned about it having a proper fuse, you can always change the fuse to a lower amperage fuse to match up with the accessory you have. You just don't want to increase the amperage of the fuse for an accessory that's higher than what's rated here. Really, this is probably the highest amperage that you want to run on each circuit. So for instance, the 40 amp switch 5 and 6, you don't want to be running a 50 or 60 amp accessory on it, even if you switch out the fuse. It's only a 10 gauge wire, and you could risk damaging the wiring and causing it to have a problem. So for us, with the ARBs, we ran to 5 and 6. And you can see the way we did it down here, if you take a look, is we got some butt connectors that are marine grade, and they have heat shrink on them. So it's really simple. Just strip back the wire for the one that runs the fuse block and then your accessory wire, and then go ahead and crimp it, heat shrink it. And what I like to do is get a labeler and then label the wire, so that way if you later on down the road are digging around in your wiring, or somebody else's, they can figure out what the heck you did. So that's an easy thing to do. Just use a P-Touch labeler and get those things labeled. The other thing you want to do is when you're running your wiring, you'll see we used a sheathing to cover the wires. So this will help protect the wires, and then make sure that you route them high and out of the way. So our wire harness runs the other side of the engine block, runs up over this, and then runs across the top. We use the existing firewall studs and just use a tie wrap with a screw hole in it, and then found a nut to match that and just secured it up across there. You can see it runs across all the way over to the ARB compressors on the other side. So it just keeps the wiring secured, but also it keeps it from getting damaged, especially from heat. You want to avoid areas that are going to be excessively hot. Also anywhere that's going to cause friction, rubbing back and forth, it might cut through that wire. So when you run your route, your cabling, make sure you give those considerations. And then just use tie wraps where appropriate to kind of secure it is really the easiest, best way to do that. So that's how you can wire accessories up. And this is great because we ran one of our accessories here is for an air locker. Another one is for the front LED light bar. And it's great because you can run it straight here to this block. And in a lot of cases, it will be enough to power them. Now, if you're running something, let's say that's a 50 or 60 amp requirement, what you want to do is you could select any of these wires, but then just make sure that you run a relay to that device and run the power wire for that accessory to this fuse block or this bus bar that's on the side of the battery. So you'll see off of this battery that there's some extra, if you pull the cover, there's some extra ports here, some extra studs that you can run your power wire to. So that way you'll keep from overloading any of those circuits that they installed there from the factory. So let's take a look inside the truck and we'll see what those switches look like. On the inside, we have these 6 auxiliary switches up here in the headliner. And you can see what I did is just used a P-Touch labeler and made little labels for each of these. And I just cut them out so they looked a little bit more decorative, so they're curved out, but I just use scissors to cut them out. It's not anything fancy. One thing to make the labels appear more uniform is you want to basically figure out the longest label, the most amount of characters you're going to use, and try to match how many characters you use on each label so it just appears uniform and a little bit more professional maybe than something that's home done, even though it is home done. But a P-Touch labeler will do a nice label, a lot cleaner looking than writing on it with a Sharpie or something like that will do, but also make it nice because then anyone could see what each one of those switches is doing. We have so far hooked up 4 of the different auxiliary switches. We have one for the LED light bar in the front. We've got a front air locker, and then the 2 ARB compressors. We haven't wired the rear LED lights or the fog lights yet. I guess we have to buy fog lights first before we can wire them, but we will be doing that at some point, maybe this fall or whatnot. But for now, we got it kind of all squared away. I figured I hadn't seen any other videos on showing how this works and how best to connect to it, and so I figured this might be helpful for you guys if you have one of these newer trucks. And if you don't, maybe you should buy one because they're awesome and they actually work really well. It's a pretty neat feature. If you're ordering one of these trucks, make sure to put that option in there because I think it's $150 or something, really cheap for having that really nice built-in switch panel. And each switch, when you flip it, it turns the light on so you know it's activated. It's a really nicely done factory option there. And it's nice that they actually gave it enough amperage on that panel so you can run some pretty sizable accessories off it. I was pretty impressed to run the compressors straight off of that panel. So we ditched the relay and everything. It's running straight to the compressor. So it's pretty great. So hope you found this interesting. And if you enjoyed any of it, hit a like button and subscribe. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.